Okay, so we're going to go in 3, 2, 1. Lions Lounge Lockdown, episode 63. Kenny Jackett. King Kenny, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, very good, Dan. Yourself?
Oh, good, mate. Especially after last night's result, which we'll cover in a minute. But buzzing to talk to you. A big scoop for the channel. Loved at Millwall for the right reasons, of course. 3 trips to Wembley, I think.
Yeah, no problems, and looking forward to it. Yeah,
brilliant. So yeah, we'll just cover. I mean, by the time this goes out, it'll be a bit dated. But Millwall Watford last night. Of course, you was a one-man club with Watford, managed Millwall. You was there as well. I heard some people saying you was there last night.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of games. I saw the Stoke game, start of the season, and then I saw the Watford game, as you say, last night. You know, so 2 good wins really, and it's an open championship this year. I know they say many times, but you know the amount of games that everybody's lost. The sides that have sort of gone away early, Norwich and Sheffield United, but have recently gone on bad runs. You know, so it looks really good and an excellent competition. And I do think for Millwall, there's a chance this year.
Yeah, it's really cliche to say, you know, it's anyone can beat anyone. But I saw a stat actually just before we went on air. It was Blackburn have lost, I think, 6 games and won 8, and Coventry have lost less games than Blackburn, but they're bottom.
Yeah, that's it. That's true. They've got games in hand. So, as you say, probably by the time this goes out, it'll have evolved. But it does look an interesting championship. You know, it's a good standard, and everybody's beating everyone at the moment.
Yeah,
the big bumps near the bottom, which you do think they will improve. You know, West Brom and Middlesbrough generally, you know, they will improve as well. So, you know, it'll be a good year to watch.
So West Brom don't improve before Saturday, though. I don't mind after that. But so you're saying that's good because you went 2 wins. You didn't say I thought you should be a bit more neutral than that because, of course, you played your whole career one-man club, Watford.
Yeah, I did. That's right. And it's a long time ago now, but they obviously gave me my start in the game. And, you know, I fully appreciate that. Going on to a management career, the biggest chunk of it was at Millwall, which is almost 6 years, which, you know, I was very proud of as well and enjoyed my time there. It was a fantastic club from the inside. You know, everybody looked after us and looked after me very well and give me every chance to be able to do my job. It was John Berylson's just him starting. You know, I was his first manager when he actually, you know, came on board. He was an investor first, then he come on as a sort of frontline chairman and has been there ever since. So, and done a fantastic job for the club.
Yeah, he's very well respected by the fan base. We don't always spend a lot of money, but I know, you know, rumours he puts a lot in himself to keep it afloat, and he really is, you know, part of the club, and he's a fan as well as anything now.
He is, and you know, it hasn't got, you know, a massive natural fan base. If you look at, you know, what he's developed, how he's done, how he's supported it in years to come now, you know, recent years to come, there's another training ground on the way. You know, it's fantastic work really, and such a consistency about it as well.
Yeah, it's true, mate. Very, very true. Consistency is key. So you played for Watford your whole career, then you started your managerial career at Watford, moved on to Swansea, and then you came to Millwall. And I've looked this up, correct me if I'm wrong, but in between the Swansea and coming to us, he was actually reserve team manager at Man City. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. Been around the country, as you say, spending so long and all my playing career just being in one area. I'm made up for it. Yeah, South Wales up to Manchester, and before coming back down south to manage Millwall, which was a great opportunity for me, and you know, very pleased to take.
It says on Wikipedia, again, it may not be right. If you don't want to discuss it, that's fine. But it said at first Millwall approached you and then you pulled out the running, but then eventually they come back in and they got their man.
Yeah, I'd spoken to them as sort of John was taking over. John Berylson, you know, he was very impressive, by the way. And then as that got closer, let's say, to a takeover, and you know, his enthusiasm really rubbed off on me. That was that time period, you know, and takeovers take a little bit of time from being an investor to you know, to being the main man at the club. I did want to at that time, although I was up in Manchester, you know, running the 21s team, I did want to go back into frontline management and was looking for a chance. And Millwall was a club I knew. I knew it very well. I'd obviously played and coached in and around the southeast anyway, but knew quite a few people that had worked there. You know, lots of Tom Wally, people like that. very, very good people, and always spoke well of the club. So I did feel as if I knew the club, and I got it. And as I said, in being up in Manchester at that time, I was looking for the chance and opportunity. It did come when John took over, and as you say there, you know, the process worked through where, you know, I joined, and you know, it was a fresh start for both of us.
Yeah, mate, you mentioned Tom Waller there. Of course, he's been mentioned loads in our ex-player interviews. Mark Beard, a few others. Obviously, big impact on the youth team. So you had that obviously emphasis on that side of it as well to really lean on Tom, maybe.
Yeah, Tom was my own youth team manager down at Watford, you know, and
right.
I always had the ultimate respect for, and when he moved over to Millwall, I mean, he did great things, you know, the Ben Thatchers, as you said, you know, Mark Beard. I can remember those lads playing, and Tom picking them up and getting them to a Youth Cup semi-final, and I actually came over for that game where they, you know, they played the Man United class of '92, didn't they? You know, with Scholes and Neville, etc., which is a fantastic Man United side, and Millwall gave them a run for their money in that final as well.
Yeah, it's brilliant, mate. So when you came over to the club, what was, you know, Berylson sold the dream to you, and you said you was really impressed by him. What was his ambition for the club at this point? We're in League One. What was yours and his plan to do?
Yeah, to improve, because at that particular time we were in the relegation, and it was November time. You know, it was a few months had gone of the season, so it's in the relegation places in League One. You know, John was then a new owner, if you like, a new chairman then, soon to be, which did appeal to me. He came across very well. He was very enthusiastic. At the time, Andy Ambler, Heather Rabat, you know, was there as well. Jeff Burnage, Stuart Till. You know, they were really sort of hurting really with the position that the club were in. And you know, first off, we wanted to improve, but ultimately to, you know, get up into the Championship, try and establish ourselves if we could into the top 30 clubs in the country, and then to always be within touching distance of the Premier League, and you know, if possible, be able to get there. It's not something that Millwall have necessarily achieved, but you know, John, from that position where it did look like there was a possibility of the club going down into League Two, you know, he certainly put it on a straight path, and has guided it very well since then.
Oh, absolutely, mate, absolutely. So you come to the club 6th of November in 2007. You had a 5.5-year tenure. Am I right in saying that the day you was appointed, we played your old club, Swansea, in a 2-2 draw at the Den?
My first game was actually in the FA Cup.
The next one, okay.
Yeah, so you know, that was the first one. I think that the actual Swansea game, I was in talks, or it was done that afternoon. Does that make sense? You know, so it turned over. The game then came pretty quickly, but I was talking to the guys then, or you know, dotting the I's, crossing the T's at that particular time. But it was actually on that day where everything was agreed. Yes, and the Altrincham game was on the Saturday, I believe, in the FA Cup.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That season, you sort of say was in and around the relegation. You steered us clear, and then in the 2002, 8 and 9 season, we kicked on. Mate, we came 5th that season, didn't we? Did you make any notable transfers in during that summer?
Yeah, first summer. There was a lot of injury problems. To be fair, you know, they staff wise, they didn't have a physio. That wasn't anybody's fault. But you know, when you haven't got, let's say, a physio or a physio department or a permanent one, and then you have a lot of injuries, you know, it can be slightly chaotic. I don't think that was anybody's fault. It was just something that needed to be resurrected anyway. Myself as a new manager, and there was, you know, some big players out. Andy Frampton, Paul Robinson was out injured. Chris Hackett was out. You know, players that contributed very well. Neil Harris was out injured. You know, so during that particular time, I did feel as well there was the basis of a good team, and there was. You know, I inherited Alan Dunn, Paul Robinson, Zach Whitbread. You know, lads like that. Andy Frampton. You know, was there. Neil Harris, Gary Alexander, Chris Hackett. You know, they formed the nucleus of the team for the next couple of seasons. We needed to get them into shape a little bit, if you like, in terms of organisation, and you know, some of those boys back from injury. But we you know, quite quickly then went into Crystal Palace, took Tony Craig from Crystal Palace, or brought him back from Crystal Palace. That was sort of one of our first ones, and also two young lads at the time, Lewis Grabban and Dave Martin, as well, from Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
So
I
those,
didn't realise Grabban come from Palace, because I was going to ask you about him. What was he like to?
yeah,
Because he's a great striker, and but obviously didn't really work out for Millwall. He's always been this ding dong with him, Millwall. What was he like to manage?
yeah, he's a talent, and you've seen it. Scored a lot of goals, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Done a lot of good for a lot of teams. Anyway, it was a young lad then, and just needing a chance, if you like, from not getting one at Crystal Palace, and just being a young lad there, and probably needed to go on his journey. So we signed sort of two guys there in Lewis Grabban and Dave Martin, who we did think were young and talented, if you like. Tony Craig was ready to come in and do very well, and so we added those guys, and signed Jimmy Abdu pretty early as well during that particular time, and that was the basis of the team for a couple of seasons. And once we did get those lads fit, Ryan Smith played the first year, who was a very talented boy, but then moved on to America at the end of, let's say, my first half season that played. So it was pulling that group into a team. I did think, though, there was a nucleus of a side there, and that was proved right, because, as you say, by the end of my first full year, we improved. We finished fifth. We lost in the playoff final. You go through the team, and Alan Dunn, Paul Robinson, Zach had played that year. Tony Craig had been injured, been back. Andy Frampton, Jimmy Abdu. Then, as I said, Neil and Gary up front. Chris Hackett, Lewis Grabban, Dave Martin. That was the basis of the side for a couple of seasons that really did improve and give us some confidence that we could do well into League One, which was the case. Later on, and then after that, we did add the likes of David Ford, who was a key one. Is a real key one. Fordy,
Yeah.
Personality, and obviously have a good goalkeeper is a big thing. But massive personality, did really, really well. And the season after that, Steve Morrison. So that team evolved. That got into the championship. It evolved off, I felt, quite a good base. And unfortunately, going in myself, I walked into a club with a lot of injuries, have been chopping and changing quite a bit, and it needed to settle down. But had several players, I think, with really good potential.
Yeah, it's mad you said it, because you said you had a lot of injuries, but you also had no physio. Do you think those injuries were related to that? You had no physio, and people, like fans like me, maybe don't always understand the importance of getting that structure right, top to bottom. It's not just about the 11 that you name to start.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The working environment for them, and obviously, fitness for footballers is a big thing. I don't think it was anybody's fault. The physio just up and left, which he's entitled to do, and that was it. And then recruiting one became a little bit of a tough process. But I inherited that, if you like, and as I said, it was like that. And as my impressions of walking in were that we needed some structure to that physio department to start getting these guys back, support them. And in the end, good physio work is prevention rather than cure as well. So, the club were in the process of doing that. And once we got that settled down and a few of those boys back and worked hard to keep them fit and keep them back, the club did stabilise, through that period.
I asked you if there was. Sorry, I've lost my voice a bit last night, screaming, all the goals going in. But my voice ain't used to that. I asked you if there's any notable incomings during that summer, and I've obviously researched it in my notes. Jimmy Abdu, you mentioned him. Talk us about Jimmy. Go down in as a cult hero with Millwall fans.
Yeah, fantastic player. He played for Plymouth in the Championship then, and top half of the Championship as well. And he'd played a lot of games. I'd seen him play for them and do well. I was a little bit surprised that they released him at the end of that season, but they were maybe looking to kick on at that time and then get into the Premier League. So they released him at the end of that season from the top half of the Championship. I was pleased to say we persuaded him to come to Millwall, and he was a really, really good player for us, Jimmy. A very, very popular lad with everybody.
Yeah, what was he like as a person?
And the other players, the other players loved him as well. Fantastic character, never give up. And was there sort of lad, had a smile and a work ethic and a work rate every single day. Great person to work with, and as you say, the crowd took to him as well.
Yeah, he's been on the channel. He just seemed really happy to be here. He just seems really humble and Not really. He's actually told, "I'm just Jimmy." That was the title of his video, because he just didn't. Nothing phased him, and he was just really, really humble and just smiling throughout.
I remember him doing an interview at a Player of the Year do one year, and them sort of saying, "Well, do you want to go and?" Because he's obviously French. Do you want to go back and play in France? And it was, no, I don't. I want to stay here. I like it here. It was as blunt as that. And like you said, with that big smile, I said, "Well, why would I want to go back? Why would I want to go back to France? I want to play here." It was good. He got such a round of applause, and his bluntness was fantastic. And as you say, infectious character, but his enthusiasm was fantastic, and it did rub off on the rest of the players.
Yeah, he's a good guy, Jimmy. Good guy. So you mentioned as well David Ford there. He's been on the show, Dave Fordy. Really, told some really great stories, but quite intense of them, and really intelligent as well. Really, I seem like a really intelligent bloke.
Yeah, he's obviously developed his own career now as well, hasn't he? From going on and playing. But he was at Cardiff at the time. I think he was maybe number 3 goalkeeper at Cardiff. He'd been over to West Ham. I'd seen him come over from Ireland at West Ham, and again, high standards didn't sort of break through. Went back anyway to Ireland and played in the Irish League, and then come over to Cardiff, and unfortunately, sort of both times couldn't quite break through to clubs at the top level. He went out on loan at Bournemouth, and in my first year when we were battling against relegation, he actually saved a penalty from Neil Harris at Bournemouth away, which affected the game, and did really well in League One anyway. So I was pleased to say that we followed him from then, made contact at the end of the season when his contract was up. He was looking to go and be a number 1, and he was ready to go and be a number 1 somewhere, definitely. And also, was very interested in Millwall if we'd commit to him and give him a chance as the main man, if you like, and I felt confident of him coming in, and it was a big one for us, a big player.
Yeah. Himself, I looked at the back 4 on the opening day of the season. We lost 4-3 away at Oldham. Fortunately, things got better. We had Paul Robinson, Alan Dunn, David Ford, and Tony Craig all in the back line. You wouldn't expect them boys to be shipping 4 at Oldham, would you?
Yeah, it must have been the referee, Dan, to be fair. That a couple of dodgy penalties or something. They didn't concede many goals, them boys. They knew what they were doing. But and the big thing about those guys is that they weren't, let's say, perfect all of the time. I'm not saying that it was, but they had the character to always come back, which is a big thing in football. How you react to a disappointing half, as you say, maybe a disappointing result where you haven't quite got it right, the manager hasn't got it right, but they had such character, that group, where you always felt they were going to fight back and overcome, and actually quite enjoyed a bit of adversity.
You need that. You need that sort of character to be a Millwall player, don't you?
Oh yeah, you do need that. So, you get results like that. You may get results like that at a certain point of the season. My biggest one was the Leeds semi-final playoff, and the atmosphere at Leeds was unbelievable in that semi-final. And they scored to make the tie, let's say 1 each.
Yeah.
The levels seemed to go up again. The roof, if there had been a roof, it had taken off. It was incredible, and it was those lads playing, and Dan, they didn't buckle one bit. They saw it through, got the draw, got through to the final, and yeah, a lot of character in them fellas, and it's good to work with.
Yeah, it's not always good to credit Leeds as a Millwall fan, but the noise comes out of that stadium at Ellen Road, and I think we had 900 fans there that night. I've been watching some footage recently in preparation for it. You come back out at the end, clap the fans, and they're chanting your name. I bet it was buzzing in that dressing room afterwards, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was incredible. But as you said, in terms of Ellen Road and semi-final, and yeah, it was a tight game anyway. The two sides had some real battles, and traditionally, as you say, some battles as well. But it was a great game, and our lads responded very, very well. Fantastic atmosphere, but we got the right result.
Yeah, and I always reflect on this because obviously I was expecting to go up. On reflection for the final, was we the favourites? I know as a manager you'd never let us underestimate them, but could sometimes the feeling come across from the media and the fan base that we should be winning this game? How do you try and keep the players focused, and on the job?
Was this Scunthorpe? The
Yeah,
Scunthorpe,
sorry. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Scunthorpe one. I don't know. I think they've beaten us that season. You know, and if you're looking at their forward line, you know, with Hayes and Sparrow and, you know, people like that, they had a good side as well. You know, very good side, and so you know, we obviously knew a lot about them during the course of the season. They were a good side at that time, and yes, you know, Millwall is a bigger club than Scunthorpe, definitely, and on the day, you know, we had the advantage in terms of supporters.
Mm.
We thought it'd be a good game. Both sides wanted to attack. But they did have a very good attack, and no, I thought it was 50-50. I didn't think it was necessarily, you know, clear favourites, if you like. And you know, if you're looking at the form book in terms of the season, there are some great goals. Unfortunately, we come out the wrong side of it. But again, the character of the players, you know, it didn't knock them; it spurred them on. You know, as you said, you know, we had to, after that game, you know, and it hurts. It's hard losing the final. It's very, very difficult. You know, there's not a lot of words you can say, but you know, we have to sort of use it as fuel to be more determined to make it, you know, an even better season next year, and go one better, and look at the positives out of it. You know, we'd come from fighting relegation the season before to being fifth. We got to Wembley. Yeah, ultimately, yeah, we were disappointed not to win it. But you know, why can't we continue with, you know, with it being a good period for the club rather than just a good season, and go and do well next year?
No, spot on. I think you know, as a fan base, I never thought we in my lifetime Millwall would get to Wembley. Then we did in the auto windscreens '99, I think it was, and I thought, oh, you know, that's going to be our one and only thing. And then obviously the Man United Cup final was in Cardiff. So actually get to Wembley, this was probably, you know, a lot of the fans' first time. Didn't think it was going to happen. I think the occasion maybe, you know, for the fans, I think we were just so deflated afterwards. But let's talk about Gary Alexander's goal. I know Gal personally, I used to play against him as kids. Unbelievable. Like, I was right behind it when it went in.
Yeah, and he, you know, him and Neil did very well for us early
Yeah.
days. You know, we were very reliant on them. We didn't have, you know, much else. And as you say, what strike? I was the same. I was right behind it and beat the keeper all ends up. It's just, you know, there's a header later on for him, but you know, it was as you said, one of the great goals. Anyway, it's a fantastic goal, and proud of the players really for how far they've taken us that year. We were all, like you said, there are no words to describe it. You know, losing the final is deflating. It's difficult, but you know, you have to use it as fuel to continue to be successful. And you know, I wanted it to be a successful period results wise for Millwall. I didn't want us to, you know, have one good season and then fall away. And you know, that was part of it. And I do believe if you keep chipping away as well, you can get there, and that proved to be the case the next year. But anyway, yeah, for Gary, again, you know, one of the most wholehearted, unselfish players I've ever worked with, and you know, did a great job for us, and you know, real reliable lad, fantastic lad, and as I said, one of the most unselfish players on the pitch I've ever seen. So it's great to see him get that goal at Wembley.
Yeah, another striker that's done well for you, not just for you, but for the club in general. In that season, you haven't been there long, but in that season, Neil Harris breaks Telly Sheringham's record, scores 138 goals eventually for the club. Do you remember the day he broke that away at Crewe?
Yeah, and you know, for Neil, it was, you know, he always wanted that to happen. I did feel then that, you know, with fair luck on injury, he'd do that, he would be able to get that, and it was something that he had his sights on as well. You know, for him, if he got his finishing was excellent, really, really good. Neil Harris could finish a real high percentage of his chances, you know, and you always felt confident if it fell to him in the box, he could put it away. You know, he had that instinct. You know, a couple of really good traits where he could come back from an offside position, just be about in line, and then get the first touch. And it's a sort of skill in the box to be able to do that. The top boys have got it, and you know, Neil had that and scored some vital goals for us. And along with Gary at that particular time, led the line well.
Yeah, what was he like, Neil, as a man? And could you see it? You know, could you see in him that he could eventually go on to be a manager? Because all the other players I spoke to, the player said no chance.
Did they? Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I
Clever
mean,
lad.
not denying he's not been a great manager. He's been successful for Millwall, but they said, like Tony Waller said to me, you know, Richard Sadley, you know, no, he could never would have thought he'd be the last one to be a manager.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. He's a clever, you know, a clever man
Yeah.
now. But even then, he's a clever lad, determined, fiery as well as a player. You know, he was fiery. He was fiery in the tunnel with the opposition. Got the boys going well. You know, and yeah, he was a fiery character, but an intelligent one. And yeah, I did think he'd go on and go into coaching, which he did. You know, and he did quite a few years as a 21s coach as well. You know, before he took the manager's job, and you know was speaking to him at the time, sort of contemplating whether to go on and be a manager, which he has, or whether to stay in coaching at that particular time as well. So you know, while you say, can you see it? There is a transition as well. You know, he you know transitioned quite well, and over a few years went from player to manager.
Yeah, it's mad that he did exactly what you did, didn't he? First attempt, lost in the playoff final. Second attempt next year, promotion, and that's exactly what happens to us. The following season, 2009, 2010. I asked you earlier, any notable additions for the 2008-09 season? You said a few, but one very notable one in this summer, Steve Morrison joins the club from Stevenage for £130,000. How does that, I want to know so much about this. You got him, obviously, you signed him for the club. I'm sure there would have been others interested with his non-league history. How do you go about scoping and sorting, you know, sifting through and finding a player from non-league? Bearing in mind, in those days, social media wasn't really a thing.
Yeah, but you know, you were still, even then, we would still have scouts, and we would still have list of players that we think that we think are going to be suitable for us. You know wherever you are, if you're in League One, you know where your market is. You may be looking at then the Premier League and the Championship. Let's say players that are not playing, or young players that haven't quite made it and need an opportunity. So, you know, similar to that, again, if you're in League One, you look at those higher, but then you look at those doing well lower, maybe into League Two and then the National League. So there would be a list of ones that. And it has to, the big thing with scouting, Dan, is it has to be an achievable list. You know, we can all have a fantasy list, and we can waste a lot of transfer windows chasing players that you're not going to get. So it has to be a realistic list that you know you can afford and will come to you at your club, the position that they're in at that time. So, you know, getting that right, getting that in context is important. In scouting, as it is now, you know, you can get a lot of data on people now. But as I said, you know, the key one is, you know, you've got to concentrate on the ones that are in your scope. Anyways, it surprised me because Steve had been top scorer in the National League for a couple of seasons and not move out. You know, and that did surprise me because, you know, scoring goals is scoring goals, isn't it? And it looked like he just missed his chance really to come out of non-league because, you know, he was 25, 26 by the time he joined us as well. And as I said, you know, he'd been the top scorer in that league for a while. I live up in St Albans, so, you know, I'd watched Stevenage a lot and, you know, watched Steve play quite a lot and did think that he could still score goals higher up. But it did surprise me nobody had taken him in that time because he was there for everybody to see. You know, somebody scoring goals in the National League. You know, it's as you said, with or without social media.
I think in this day and age, I know there's scouting systems and stuff, it's all done right. But in this day and age with social media, the sheer amount of coverage there is on TV of all football, I think there's no way he stays at Stevenage for that long or Mill get him for that reasonable price. You know what I mean?
No, that's probably true. It does depend, though, on the contractual situation as well, because you can get some very big players, very good players down there, but maybe they're asking for too much money at that particular time as well. And maybe a year later, you know, you see the top boys, Man City are the ones now, aren't they? But they're almost doing their scouting 2 years in advance. As you've just seen it with Highland, really, where they seem to be, you know, going there for the last 18 months, if you like. And you know, if you get into a good position as a club, then that's the ideal. That's what you aim for, definitely. But it does go around contractual situations. But even at the time, I was still surprised though that he was still there. Definitely, it wasn't an easy pick off because Stevenage at the time had ambitions to get in the league. They were always in and around the playoffs of the National League. They were in the final of the FA Trophy. You know, playing at Wembley, etc., etc. So you know, they did have ambitions themselves to go on and get into the league, which they did after that as well. So it wasn't necessarily an easy club to pick off, if you like. But as his contract run down, I was surprised that he was still there. And yeah, you know, maybe you're right with more information. then perhaps he doesn't. He doesn't stay there as long.
Yeah. On the flip side to Neil Harris saying, some of his ex-teammates, and it wasn't in a bad way. They couldn't really see him going into it. I just thought all day long, Steve Morrison will be a manager at some point.
Yeah,
it's just so not stern. I used to love him at Millwall, and I mean, obviously he's loved. He's a legend, but a lot of fans, when they give it to him, and he'd go fuck off, or I mean, I love that about him. That he was very similar to the fans in that aspect. He just told people what he thought. If they didn't like it, then tough shit sort of thing. You know what I mean?
He's a real strong character, Steve, and he's quite quiet, to be honest with you. But he's a very strong character, and again, intelligent lad behind it. He knows, he does know and knew what he was doing. He wasn't a kid when he came to Millwall. He was 26, and also as well, he was frustrated he didn't get a chance in league football. He'd been released by Northampton, and then went on league. Now, as I said, Steve and his were at that particular time one of the National League sides that had the potential and were trying to get out of that league and competing at the top. But he was by the time he came to us, he was single-minded and determined and knew this was his chance, and he was old enough to make sure it actually was right, and it had happened, which does happen to a lot of lads that maybe get released, like he did at Northampton, go out into non-league. When they get their next chance, they're ready. They're doing, and he's single-minded about that, and it was good to see. It took him. Didn't get many. I think it was even the first 20 games. He didn't score. He didn't score. Look at his record. But then when he did start scoring, they came thick and fast. Then he did very well. But as well as his goals, though, he was a presence. And what I like is his pace. Early on, he gave us another dimension with his pace at that particular time to get in behind defenders. It really took the team onto another level.
Yeah, we got promoted that year. Like I said, obviously, he was the manager. We finished third. We'll get on to that in a minute. What I want to ask you about first is a couple of games that stand out. Your first taste of a derby, West Ham away, League Cup. We lost 3-1, of course, didn't we?
Unbelievable game.
Yeah.
What a game. Unbelievable. That was, you had to be there to experience that, Dan. You really
was there, yeah. It was carnage. Took the lead through Neil Harris, didn't we?
The whole thing, and God, there, and the amount of people going on the pitch. We were Neil had scored, got us 1-0 up, and the referee kept asking me, do you want to take this side off the pitch? It was myself and Gianfranco Zola were the managers, but he kept asking me. The fans running on, they got it wrong in terms of the police levels, the stewards, and there could have been a lot of trouble there. And anyway, the referees constantly asking me, do you want to take the teams off? Well, obviously we were 1-0 up for the majority of the game, so I didn't want the break, and I didn't want it called off and replayed. I obviously wanted to win, and we nearly pulled it off. They equalised on 87 minutes. I can't exactly remember the equaliser, but it was Stanislaus got the wrong side of Dunny on the far post and hit it past 40, and that was it. Then the stadium was off and running. They'd snatched a 1-1 and got 2 more goals in extra time. So for us, it was close, and we give it a really good go. Scott Parker, they had a really good side out as well. But it was some night, and it's a frustrating one. We couldn't quite pull it off.
Yeah, another derby. Little bit more low key, but still a derby. The Charlton game, the 4-4 game, just after around Christmas.
Yeah,
that was another crazy game.
It was a crazy game, and we did well again. To be able to come back into it, we kept going. Spirit of that side was high. Character of that side was really high, and didn't know when they were beaten. And ourselves at that time with the people that we had playing were really hard to beat. And as you say, it was a sort of ding dong battle, if you like, and we did well to get a draw out of it because it gives some poor goals away.
Yeah, we did. I think Steve Morrison scored an own goal, didn't he? And 2 others for us.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
he did. Yeah. So we finished third that season. We actually did the double over Leeds as well, didn't we? Again, just for a change. They actually went up second. We came third. We played Huddersfield, who were 6th. There's that another old cliche in football where you go, the team that finishes third never goes up. Was that on your mind at all?
Yeah, you look at those, but then when you actually do see it, I think throughout all of the playoff system, the side that's finished third has got promoted the most. That is it. But I did feel we were capable of beating the other sides as well. The teams that were in it, although we'd loved, first or second or whatever. I felt more positive than negative about the whole thing. I was confident in the group, and I did feel as a club we could go through, and out of the four sides, we shouldn't be frightened of anybody. It proved to be the case, and really good win. It's Lee Clark, wasn't it, the manager? Time and highly funded side, and we did well. We beat them and got through to Wembley.
I watched another podcast. I watched the first leg. I was in Marbella at a stag do, 0-0. We got the job done, and then the home game against Huddersfield. That was one of the loudest I've ever heard it at the Den. It was unbelievable. And I watched a podcast recently with Lee Clark on it, and he said, we half knew, like, we had young boys, good side, but young team going to the Den, full house, and the atmosphere just overtook.
Yeah, the Den. I mean, it was full at that particular time, but on those nights, on those, let's say, those special days, the Den can be half full and still generate a great atmosphere.
Yeah,
and if the football's right, if you're right on the pitch, they can get behind you like nothing else. So it can generate that, but when it's full, and then on those sort of all or nothing games, if semi-finals and big cup games, if you like, absolutely massive games, then the atmosphere is electric. It was for that particular game, and players really responded, took it on really well.
Yeah, Robbo scores one. We'll get on to the final shortly, but what a skipper. He's been on the show. What a man.
Paul Robinson.
Yeah.
An unbelievable effect during that time on the club. It's first sort of looking at the different partners. he just at the back end of I think it was Willie Donaghy, and then myself coming in, as we discussed earlier. He played with Richard Shaw. I mean, that was a good partnership. It's a very good partnership. Zach Whitbread come through, Tony Craig, and once Zach went, then we had Tony Craig there, and you can't just get through a season, a promotion season, with just two centre backs, and we took Darren Ward back then. So we had Robbo, Darren Ward, Tony Craig. Tony Craig then at times could play left back, and it covered us defensively very, very well, made us solid. And he was the leader, he was the leader of all of it, and took the responsibility. Some of his performances, it's almost the best player in his own box of being able to block shots and read where they're going and get his body in the way. And when they do say, yeah, put your body on the line, that was Robbo all of the time.
I think I've seen nothing to do with that game, but I've seen a picture of him from an away game at Brentford. He's celebrating. He's got mud all over his head. He's got a bandana on with blood all coming through it. And he's just like that at the away and celebrating with the fans.
Yeah, he's a fantastic lad. And as you said, a leader, but one of the best defenders, natural defenders in terms of reading where the ball's going, and being able to intercept, block, read the game. He was fantastic at it, but his leadership qualities were great. And during that time, and in some of those big games, there's spells where you think he's playing them on his own. He was that good defensively.
Yeah, and then we come against Swindon in the final. We had played them on the last day of the season, and beaten 3-2 at the Den, so you definitely knew a lot about our opposition. And the game plan obviously worked because we won. But what was the game plan going into that Swindon game?
We were the better side. Charlie Austin missing the big chance helped us, definitely. Yeah. But having said that, I know it was a 1-0, but I thought we were the better side on the day, and deserved to win. It was a bit different from the strength of Scunthorpe, particularly their front line the year before. And we did have a good enough side to win. I thought that we could handle the occasion, and would all of us really, players and staff and manager, were determined to be able to see it through. So we did the job, and Robbo got the winner, which was fitting as well.
Tell you what a goal that was. I know it's up, but the control from that long corner, the way he brings it down his chest and cushions it.
Yeah, he knew what he was doing as well, and by that time had enough experience and composure to get some vital goals as well. But in terms of both boxes, great awareness and a key goal, and pleased for him as well. For him for everything that he put in and everything he has put in for Millwall, for him to always be that, that guy that scored the winner for Millwall at Wembley. He deserved it.
Yeah, stuff dreams are made of, mate. I bet JB had the cigars out, didn't he, at full time and afterwards?
He did, yeah, definitely. Yeah, he did. He was through that time, and everybody would say the same. Fantastic chairman. His enthusiasm for football is great. Even speaking to him yesterday on the phone, and he's still the same. His enthusiasm for Millwall is thirst for more knowledge, if you like, of what's going on, of how it's developing, of this player, that player, how our partnerships are going, and it came across to all of us at the time where he would go into the dressing room, wish all of the players the very best of luck, if you like, and real lively, upbeat character before a game, and after the game, enjoyed going into the dressing room, and it's good as a manager for the players to know that they've got a chairman, they've got somebody that backs them, and he certainly did, and has done with every single person that works there.
Question I wanted to ask you was, if we hadn't have won, God forbid, 2 back-to-back defeats in playoff finals, what would do you know what your next move would have been? Like, would you have carried on, or?
Yeah, I would have definitely carried on. I wanted it to be a successful period for the club. It would have been hard, to stomach to lose that game. You've almost not think about that too much in the build up to it, and yeah, it would have been tough. 100% carried on. I felt that we had the stability and the momentum to be able to sustain going again and competing again near the top end of the division. I thought we were that good. If we had to lose a player or two, which we did at the time, I thought that we would be in a position as a club to take replacements that are good enough as well. So I had every confidence in terms of the club going forward that it would continue to do well, and that proved to be the case. It would have been hard though. You lose any final or semi-final, but particularly a final. If you do lose a final, it is hard to take. Like you say, the deflation, the disappointment. You've got to then sort of turn that into fuel to be successful in the future, because football's about what you do when you get disappointments. And you get some disappointments, you'll get some bad times, whoever you are, and it's about what you do then, how you respond, and that's the case. But I myself personally, I felt the club had enough structure with John there, with Andy Ambler there. I did feel that there was enough behind the scenes and enough determination. Con, Trevor, people like that are still on the board. Very good people and good judgment as well. And in terms of a squad of players, well, there was a stability about that squad. And as I said, you always, sometimes when you just lose a player or two, that can open you up to sign 2 or 3 more that take you forward. We lost Zach Whitbread quite early, went to Leicester. We lost players along the way for one reason or another. And, we didn't go up the first year, if you like. And then, he was always then going to move on. But, we had Tony Craig and then Darren Ward joining us. And, so we replaced them, and the whole thing kept moving forward.
Brilliant. So what I was I say to you next was, we went up and pretty much, didn't make much movement in the transfer market. Was that out of choice? You wanted to give these players a chance, or did you go to, what was the chat you had with JB? Was it not any funds to invest now, or?
Yeah, I knew where we were. We really wanted to get into the top half of that league if we could. That was our aim. I didn't think we needed too much. I thought it was a tight knit group and a very, very good group. And quite often as well, Dan, you do get a lot of momentum in the first year. That proved to be the case for us.
Yeah,
we had fantastic momentum, and we went into the championship with no fear really, and doing everything we can to try and establish ourselves in the championship. We were realistic and knew our level, if you like, because quite often, once you get to the champ level, there's a real disparity in terms of the firepower for the clubs. But as a newly promoted side, you can get a lot of momentum, and I did feel confident in terms of the players that we had could make that transition up and do well in a level above where they played previously.
Yeah, well, they did. They finished 9th that season. Big Danny Shitu comes through the door. Well, he ends up being etched in Mill history for that guy at Blackburn, and that's later down the line. But just that's what we do. He was an absolute unit. He was perfect for the club, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was a really good player. You know, I know we finished ninth, but I was slightly disappointed myself. I did feel like we could maybe get in the top 6 that year, you know, and we didn't quite make not far outside, but you know, I was slightly disappointed there because we had good momentum anyway. Yeah, and you're right, talking about individuals anyway. As you go up the league, you need, obviously you need better players, but you need better athletes as well. You know, there's a difference athletically from one division to another. That's you know, the first thing. And he did give us a presence definitely in both boxes, and experience by then of what he was as doing, and you know, embraced it really well, and as you say, was a good player for us.
2 other players that came in, loanees, and I always admired you. He was really good at this. You seem to have really good connections and contacts with Premier League clubs. We've had down the years so many, which we'll get onto. But in this season, Andros Townsend, actually no, his dad Troy, so whatever, he's a good guy, his dad, and Jason Punchin come in briefly. And as I said later on, Harry Kane comes in, Ryan Mason as well. How did you just seem to have fantastic contacts?
Yeah, we had really good loans during that time. As you said, Andros was fantastic for us, a really exciting player. And Jason was as well. You know, Jason scored a hat-trick against Crystal Palace, you know, but then but going on and playing in the Premier League, didn't he? You know, and as you say, it's some of those other boys as well, Jason Punchin. You know, we had Ryan Mason, Adam Smith, Harry Kane. You know, that we used the loan market very well. It would have been great if we could have kept a few more, you know, of those guys, because as much as then they can take your club forward, when you lose them, there can be a bit of a transition until you can find the next combination of players. But as you say, there were exciting players at that particular time, and getting into the Championship gave us the chance to take, you know, some top class loans.
Someone said to me that came on the show, one of the next player he was, I don't know if he's joking, but obviously Jason Punchin scored a hat-trick against Crystal Palace in the derby. I was just messing around. They said you was trying to get him off after he'd scored 2 because you wanted to try and sign him. Is that true? And as you was trying to get him off, he scored the 3rd.
Yeah, well, you know, when you have a lone player, it's frustrating as a manager. Somebody upstairs keeps giving them man of the match and things like that. Well, you know, what you're thinking there, we want to keep this guy under the radar really, and make him our own player. But you know, look, for Jason anyway, he'd been at MK Dons and was right out the frame, had left him right out. So got a move to Southampton, and you know, was similar really. Wasn't sort of training with the first team, and you know, Southampton were down the leagues then as well. So you know, for us anyway, it was a chance to resurrect his career, whereas maybe some of the other boys were, you know, Andros was just coming through and been a really good player for, let's say, Spurs, you know, Spurs 21s, as was Harry, you know, but a little slightly different with Jason, but you know, he went on to play in the Premier League anyway, and was a very good player. And yeah, you know, when you're the manager, and quite rightly somebody's making a fuss of someone, but when they do it alone players, and you're thinking, come on, let's try and keep this fella under the radar, you know, and they're interviewing after the game, and you know, you don't want to say too much, you know, it's on the TV show that on that particular evening, and you know, if people need any more alerting, you know, scoring a hat-trick, you know, certainly brings attention to yourself.
100%, mate. Yeah. So, talk about losing players. As we mentioned him earlier, Steve Morrison signing him, and obviously it's a great bit of management by you, and the club are nurturing him in the right way. But the 2011-2012 season, he obviously gets sold in the summer to before that season starts to Norwich. How frustrating is that, losing a player of Morrow's quality? Did you know it was coming with the goals he was scoring?
Yeah, I did think that he'd go into the Premier League. Norwich, I think it was Paul Lambert then, you know, came in, made several bids really. To be fair to the board, to John, you know, if I'd have said, look, we're not selling him, they would have backed me and not sold him. But you know, we couldn't stand in Steve's way to go into the Premier League. You know, it wasn't the right thing to hold him at that particular time. And I don't think we'd have got the best out of him anyway if we'd have done. So it was right for him to go. It wasn't you know, the club putting pressure on me to do that, you know, we just at that time had to thank him for what he'd done and wish him all the best, you know, as he moved up the ladder. And you know, he was 26 by the time he came to us, so it's not like he had a lot of years either. You know, the success of his career, you know, come relatively late, if you like, and he played well into his 30s as well. You know, so it was a loss though, definitely, for us to replace his pace as anything else. You know, we'd formed some decent partnerships really there. You know, in that championship period of 2 or 3 years, where, you know, we had Andy Keogh and Harry Kane linked up quite well. Chris Wood and Darius Henderson, you know, was another partnership. You know, Neil Harris and Steve Morrison. You know, they're key ones, and it's no coincidence when you have your successful periods and successful seasons when, you know, you get those players up front that can win games for you.
I've literally you're basically going off all the notes I've got spot on. Like I said, Harris and Morrison both leave, and then Kane comes in, Keogh, Henderson. What was he like, Darius Henderson? Andy Keogh's been on the show. He absolutely loves you.
Yeah, you know, for Andy anyway, formed a really good partnership there, and you know, we were pleased to have him. Really hard working player, fitted in well at Millwall, and you know, we were pleased with him. You know, for Darius, it's some talent Darius Henderson had. You know, he was just about the strongest bloke you've ever met in your life.
Oh, he's a beast, isn't he? I badly want to get him on the show.
So strong. I remember him in the pre-season work. We went away and done a sort of, you know, some team building things, and his physical strength was unbelievable. Anyway, it really was. But he could play. You know, he could play. He wasn't just, you know, just wasn't just physical. He had good touch and a really good finisher. I mean, the hat trick he got at Leicester, where Leicester were flying at that time and going through the leagues, you know, and he scored a great hat trick there, you know. So while he did well for us, there was more in there as well, you know, and probably his time with Chris Wood there up front was his best time for us. But yeah, you know, what a good player Henderson, and had more and more to give, really, to be honest with you. Definitely would have been interesting. Could have gotten him and gotten hold of him maybe earlier in his career, you know.
Yeah. So being about Chris Wood there, I remember an away game at Brighton. I was actually in the corporate bit in the Brighton. Don't know why. My mate's dad was in business with someone, and we sat in the away end, sorry, the home end, and Chris Wood scored an unbelievable goal. So we've jumped up naturally, and I said, "Don't do that again, sorry." And then he's done it again. He scored 2 unbelievable goals that night, didn't he?
Yeah.
Brighton come back, pegged us back 2-2. A lot of fans always look to the Chris Wood thing in similar light to, not so much Puncheon, but Darren Huckabee, players we've had on loan that done really well, and then we didn't end up buying them. Was we ever realistically going to try and make that deal permanent for Wood?
Yeah, we tried really hard. John tried really hard. Leicester at that time just blew everybody out of the water, you know. They really did. We just couldn't compete at that particular level. He had offers from us, and plenty of offers as well, to be able to stay, you know. And as I said, you know, Leicester come along and just blew us out of the water, unfortunately, financially. So yeah, we tried hard. You know, we put our best foot forward. The board certainly did. You know, and it was frustrating at that time that we couldn't quite get hold of 1 or 2 of those players. But they literally did that well, that, you know, they went in at such a level that, you know, we couldn't unfortunately compete. And that happens. It's not just Millwall that happens to. It happens to every club. You know,
yeah.
You're looking at sort of anywhere people move on. It's the art in it, and the hard bit in management, and the best managers. You know, they've got the next one ready, because that player is gonna move on somewhere. And, you know, right the way up to, you know, Liverpool, if you like, in the summer, losing, you know, Mane. And what, you know, I think that's made a big effect to that club. We'll recover. Yeah. It's a fantastic club, but sometimes it takes a little bit of time to recover, you know. And so, you know, for every sort of club, there's a time when that player just progresses. But for us, we tried really hard to keep Chris, but, you know, he had the offer. He had several offers, but he had the offer from Leicester there, and it was one, unfortunately, we couldn't compete with.
Yeah, must be so frustrating. Like you say, you want these players. You work hard to get them in, whether it's on loan or permanent. Then you want them to do well, but by the same token, like you say with the loanees, they start doing too well. You can't keep them under the radar, and then someone comes in gazumption. It's like, You
And
can't
that's
really win at a club like Millwall budget wise, can you? In that race,
and that's where the current club have done well. You know, the you know, our budget, the Millwall budget is good now, and they've worked at, yeah, some loans. You know, got 2 boys from Leeds who look really good players, but it's not built on those loans. You know, it's built on permanent players now. And over the years, they've developed that very well. You know, behind the scenes, talk about the board of directors. You know, and it's built on, you know, the Hutchinsons, and you know, excellent last night. You know, I felt. And you know, it's built on some really good lads and good characters and some permanent players. It's built on that, with the loans being a supplement. You know, so that's a you know, real good example of how the club have evolved, and the board of directors through different managers and different staff have learned, and you know, built it on permanent players. You never quite envisage though that those players do that well as loans either. You know, there is always possibilities that you can take them, but as you say, there was several high profile ones that did very well for us and just stepped on, which you know, we couldn't do anything about.
The last one I'll ask you about, the last loaning, I promise, is obviously Harry Kane. Could you see he was, you know, he had potential to be as good as he's actually became?
Yeah, his work ethic and his appetite was unbelievable. He could work at an intensity. You know, he could train at an intensity. He was a gifted lad, definitely. But to be able to, you know, shoot like that, right foot, left foot, you know, headers, one touch finishes, control inside, you know, reverse it back across the keeper. He had every type of finish, but his intensity and his work rate, from him coming in from being, let's say, the first few games, really quite a young boy, you know, finding his way. He assessed it really well as well. You know, he one of the first things he said to me was like, "Yeah, playing the championship, I need to improve in the air." You know, and you're exactly right. You know, and he developed. But the biggest thing that came across was his work rate and his intensity in training. And as I said, you know, he is a talented boy, and he was a talented lad, but he had an appetite to improve, and could work at a real high intensity day after day after day. He didn't need down days. You know, he didn't need down days where he may get injured or whatever. He would be working and concentrating on his finishing mainly all of the time. And you as a coach, you put different sessions on. And I would always have put on a lot of 2v2s and 3v3s situations. Players enjoy it, and it covers a lot of the basics. It's hard work as well in terms of training. The amount of goals he was scoring a 2v2, 3v3 against good defenders in tight areas, you know, and as I said, he had every type of finish. So yeah, he was impressive, definitely. How he grew from when he came in to, you know, when he left was you know, even more impressive as well, because you could see him gain his confidence. I'm sure you guys saw it in the terraces as well. You know, you see him gain his confidence and then scored some really big goals for us.
Yeah, he did, mate. He did. But even to the level he went, surprised me slightly. But he just seems to be getting better and better, and leaner now as well. And I suppose that comes with time. But unbelievable. So, in effect, I mean, Neil Harris left the club that summer as well. Morrison went, but then we've got in Keogh, Henderson, Wood, and Kane at points. It's still a strong strike force. We didn't do as well in that next season in the Championship. Finished 16th. Do you think that was a little bit of second season syndrome? There's a couple of heavy defeats in there as well. 6-0 at Birmingham and 5-0 in the cup, I think, away at Wolves.
Yeah, the feature that I remember of those 2 particular seasons was that we were always sort of evolving. We were always changing. We're always looking for the next combination, looking for the next team. Through your successful sides, you can reel off maybe 7 or 8 players that played all the time, 7, 8, 9, 10 players that are around at that particular time. It's pretty easy. We were ever changing. We were evolving. We did have, in a short space of time as well, some really good partnerships, as you say. Henderson Wood was a really good partnership. You know, Neil Harris and Morrison. You know, Kane and Keogh. So we had some really good partnerships. Some good wingers as well around with the likes of Punchin and Andros Townsend. James Henry did well for us in that period as well.
James Henry, great player.
No, so we had some good combinations, but it always felt like we were changing. And when you're changing things, in football, it takes a little while to settle down, work at it, players need to get into a rhythm. They need to feel confident and comfortable, and sometimes that takes time, and you need some perseverance to do that. And we were always in that developing stage during those times, and it didn't ever feel then that we had a grip on the top half of the table.
Yeah. Well, so the next season, of course, will always be remembered for the FA Cup run. It was your last season at the club. We finished 20th. Did you feel more investment at this point was needed, or was it maybe a knock-on effect for the cup run that sort of slide slightly?
Yeah, I did feel there was a knock-on for the cup run, but having said that, I wouldn't take it away to go and end up playing again at Wembley. Whenever you play, I'm fortunate enough as a player, as a coach, as a manager to have been there, and you have to be proud and privileged every time that you get there. You really do. And for me to take Millwall through, we lost to the eventual winners. I'm proud of that particular cup run. It stretched us, definitely. There is no doubt about that. But that season, like the season before, I felt we were always changing, we're always evolving, we're always looking for the next combination. We're working on the job, and by the end did well not to go down. It was an achievement to be able to stay in the division. And some seasons you don't want to say that to supporters, but some sides sometimes you just have to scrap it out. You have to scrap it out and make sure you live to fight another day. And that was the case. And as you say, the cup run was a highlight of it, of a period of a season or two, where every time we got the right combination, every time we got the equation right, we lost it again.
Yeah, you took obviously Millwall to Wembley 3 times, and I know for a fact, on reflection, what would you rather say as fans? Oh, well, we didn't have a cup run that year, but we finished 10th in the Championship. You take 20th in the FA Cup semis all day long, wouldn't you?
If you can, you try to finish top half of the league, which is, I think that's the first thing, But then when those cup runs come around and they come and you get the opportunity, they're few and far between, and you have to take them as well. But in an ideal world, you do both. I don't think one against the other. You have to do both, and you always have to look after you. You don't want relegations. No. You don't want relegations. You got to go and start again. It's another building blocks. If you have to, you have to. But you want to sustain it, really, to be fair. And again, that's where the club have done well in recent years. They've had such stability and transitioned very well to building their own permanent players. With the training ground coming, they've got some players through now, some good players as well. Very good players. They've produced, and they've got a few out on loan that will come back and do well. In my opinion. So there's some good young players in the system, but the bringing the training ground in again will only look after the long-term future. It will produce more players. They'll attract more players to good facilities. That will be the case, because there's a lot of competition in London for all of the players, for the top players. So the club have learned. They've got good foundations there and built on it. But through that particular time, anyway. There was too many changes in a short space of time, but it was about fighting it out and making sure we lived to stay another day in the Championship, and we did.
Let's talk about the FA Cup run. Of course, Aston Villa at home, Blackburn away after replay. Danny Shute, who gets the header, and then into the semi-final against Wigan. I thought that's a really good side actually that day, Wigan. But let's talk a little bit about that cup run, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it was a great run, and to be able to get through. And as you say, as a club, your focus is always wanting to do well in the league. But there is something special about the FA Cup. I think the supporters feel it, but we did as well. And Wembley's a big carrot. It really is, and big games as well. As you say, Aston Villa, Blackburn, good sides at the time, and us being able to overcome them to get into the next round. Those replays, they took a lot out of us, but we dug deep and got there. And I'm really proud of the club and the players at that particular time, because it was an exciting run.
I think some people, maybe some younger viewers now would go, Wigan, but they were a good side, but they were decent.
Yeah, they were in the Premier League at that particular time, and under Dave Whelan, wasn't it? Where, I think they beat Manchester City in the final, didn't they? It was a really, really good side. Anyway, some good players. That side broke up. They Dave Whelan. As he went away from being chairman there, the club had its problems. But at that particular time, they've been in the Prem for quite a number of years.
And at the end of the season, unfortunately, you decide to leave the club. Is that correct? You said you wanted a new challenge. Did JB try and keep you? Did you want to stay on? Or
Relationship was really good with the board, and it always has been with, you know, with all of them people. They're good people, and as I said, you know, nothing but praise for them now. But with the way that their consistency, the way they've learned, the way they've built, you know, they're building the foundations for the future. You know, I can see they're good now, but I can see a good future as well. I really can. And that's down to the board of directors. So I had a good relationship with John. I felt for myself in terms of I needed another challenge. It'd been the best part of 6 years, and I also felt for Millwall, perhaps they needed, you know, another direction as well at that particular time. So
do you think if maybe he offered you a bigger transfer budget, you would have stayed?
No, I don't think it was about the budget necessarily.
No?
I don't. No, I don't. I don't think it was it was about finance at all. But you know, each club is what it is, and that's where it is. But you know, for myself anyway, I did feel it was the right time. And also as well, being in the summer, you know, the summer's an easier one to be able to sort of take stock of a season, of a situation, for, you know, for the club and for the board of directors to, you know, be able to interview people and you know, start again on the front foot, if you like, in July again.
Yeah, I'll get that, mate. Yeah, no, it made sense, and you know, you walked away, and that's why you'd always have, not just for the job you've done, but the respect to the Mill fans. Neil Harris did the same. Same can't be said for some other managers we had after you. But yeah, just to walk away, just when you're as a fan, you read between the lines thinking, I wonder if, you know, he thought we took it as far as we could. If I need more players, and they maybe understandably haven't got the transfer budget to compete, if you would have stayed. But you know, you cleared that up there. So I always ask the same questions at the end, but the only other manager I've ever interviewed was Mark McGee. So I've got to switch the questions up. Who was the best trainer you ever had as a player? Like, who was, as when you was manager, who was the best player in training, like trained the hardest?
Yeah, Paul Robinson, really. But it was close, some good, really good pros at that particular time. I mean, you know, Fordy was a beast. He really was, in terms of work rate. You know, and then there's a lot of keepers like that. But you know, but probably Paul Robinson all round. You know, he would go into the gym in the afternoon and you know, work. He would then go into, you know, flexibility sessions on his own down at the gym we were a member of. So yeah, probably one stands out is Robbo, but closely followed with, you know, David Ford, Tony Craig, some professional, him, you know, and in terms of actual just capacity and running, Gary Alexander as well. Early on, he could run, you know, he could really move. Yeah.
The best player, talent-wise, that you managed?
Yeah, in terms of an effect on a short space of time, and his own growth at that time, you'd probably have to say Kane, but that was quite a you know, a short period of time. We've discussed, you know, all of those forward players, and there's some great forward players in there, gone on to have terrific careers, and did at that particular time. You know, I include Henderson in that. You know, I do feel that there's talent in that lad, you know, in terms of his own position and a finishing in him that was really, really good. And as I said, it would have been great if he could have cut, because I did think he was a Millwall player, Henderson, and if we could have got him earlier and maybe, you know, got a better chunk of his career, if you like, you know. So that's perhaps, although he did well for us, maybe the one that could have been even better, if you like, you know. For actual competing, closing down and work rate, it was Jimmy Abdu, you know, definitely. And in terms of having an effect, though, you know, you can go on to, you know, Robinson, Tony Craig, Alan Dunn, David Ford, those guys, you know, being able to work hard and being consistent is a talent as well, as you know, as much as, you know, the forward players we've talked a lot about on the show.
Here's an interesting one. The biggest transfer you missed out on, so someone you tried to buy from Millwall, you actually thought you'd got them, and then it sort of fell through, or saying at the end.
Yeah, everybody's got this apparently now, but Vardy was one for us. Well, I went down to Yeovil to watch him, and you know, Joe Gallen, actually, it was Joe Gallen spotted him all the way through. I've got to say, it wasn't myself, but you know, Joe had an eye for a centre forward, and Yeah, Joe was on Vardy all of the time. He was on his agent, etc., etc. And you know, believe me, we were close, but he didn't come to us. Northern lad, anyway. That was more rather than him disrespecting the club or whatever. He wanted to stay up north. Had a little one up there, you know.
Yeah.
Swayed his decision, but you know, we were close to that one. But I've seen so many quotes and podcasts where there's about 90 other clubs who were all in the situation. So that game, I saw him at Yeovil. There must have been some crowd. I can't remember all them fellas there, but I can't take credit for that myself in terms of spotting him. It was Joe Gallen all the way along, and I just went down to Yeovil at the end, and you know, and we did actually get close to that one. Yeah.
That's just mad. I say his agents probably, you thought he was close to the deal. His agents on the phone, like about 15 mobiles on the phone with everyone in town.
Yeah, 15 other deals going at the same time. And that, like I said, the amount of people that said, yeah, I saw Jamie Vardy coming out of non-league since then, you know, maybe weren't as close as before. Huh?
So my final question, if someone come up to you and said to you, you was Millwall manager, wasn't you? You said, yeah. And they said, how did it go? How was the club? What would you say to them?
It's fantastic for me personally. You know, it is an achievement to do the best part of 6 years in management at one club. You know, but it was fantastic for me. The period of time, Millwall's the club, and as I said, I knew Tom Wally and Mick McCarthy and Ian Evans. I knew a lot of people that had worked at the club, and they had nothing but good things to say about working inside the club, how well they treat you. And they still do now. It's one of the best clubs. You know, you might get bigger clubs, but it's one of the best clubs inside in terms of looking after you, doing everything they can to help you to do your job to the best of your ability. And you know, at times as well, when it's under pressure, there's like a siege mentality within the club, and that's a good thing. So, yeah, fantastic times. Young family always went as well. You know, that makes a difference. You know, and in terms of us as a family, you know, the Jackett family, if you like. You know, Millwall's a great club and good times.
Brilliant, Kelly. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, mate. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, all right, Dan. Anything?
Top man. Thank you.
Bye bye.